Jesus revealed to me and sent me out to tell whoever will listen that the United States is a fulfillment of Babylon the Great found in Revelation 16 through 18. In order to qualify, the U.S. has to fulfill Revelation 18:24, which describes Babylon the Great as that nation that becomes responsible for all who are slain on the earth. The following presentation supports that the U.S. is fulfilling Revelation 18:24 when it reveals that President Obama, George Soros, and the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood orchestrated the overthrow of President Mubarak. This means that all the deaths associated with this overthrow are part of the fulfillment of Revelation 18:24. The next group of clips reveal that President Obama conspired with the Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak when they reveal that he communicated with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood throughout the overthrow of President Mubarak.
Another jihadist group that is expanding its power base is the Muslim Brotherhood. In the Middle East, the Brotherhood has used Arab Spring unrest to increase its influence across the region, and the Obama administration is reaching out to its leaders in Egypt.
The Muslim Brotherhood was set up in 1928, 4 years after the disbanding of the Muslim Caliphate by Ataturk, and their specific mission was to reestablish the Caliphate just 4 years later, and they've been pursuing that mission ever since. What the Muslim Brotherhood would like to see is a strong, powerful Islamic world government armed with nuclear weapons, whether those are provided by Pakistan or Iran, and they would be gradually eliminating Christian and Jewish influence, Christian and Jewish government.
The following clip reveals that President Obama conspired with the Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt, when it reveals that after he spoke to the Muslims about a new approach to dealing with Israel on June 4, 2009, on January 19, 2010, President Obama told the foreign minister of Egypt that he was a Muslim and that after he deals with the health care issue in the USA, the Muslims will see what he will do for the Muslims regarding Israel.
In 1995, Avi Lipkin first published his timely book, Is Fanatic Islam a Global Threat? He was one of the first to sound the alarm about the worldwide danger of radical Islam. Avi is an American-born Israeli and has served many years in the IDF, both active duty and reserves. He is in demand as a guest speaker and has appeared in more than 500 churches and synagogues in many countries of the world. He has appeared on hundreds of TV and radio stations worldwide. His wife is Rachel, an Egyptian-born Jewess, who immigrated to Israel in 1969 and who has worked in Israel's radio service in Arabic for the last 25 years, monitoring Arabic language broadcast on TV and radio, as well as in newspapers. In a recent TV interview with scholar Gary Stearman, Avi says Rachel was picking up broadcasts for years before the 2008 election, and the Saudis were saying, quote, "We will have a Muslim in the White House in 2008. Avi reveals that on January 19th of 2010, his wife picked up a broadcast on Nile TV from Egypt. She reports that it was a roundtable discussion wherein the foreign minister of Egypt reportedly said that he had a one-on-one meeting with Obama, who swore to him that he is a Muslim. Obama then reportedly explained to him all about his Muslim family background and practices. Then she alleges that Obama said, "I have a problem with some domestic issues, and as soon as I finish with the health care question, you Muslims will see what I will do for Islam regarding Israel."
On September 28, 2015, a 15-year-old Jewish boy named Natan had a near-death experience in heaven that revealed that President Obama conspired with the Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt, when it reveals that the war described in Zechariah 14, 1-5, in which all the nations gather against Israel, had already begun, and that President Obama started it.
הולך להיות משהו שנקרא מלחמה מאוד גדולה, וכולם, כל העולם הזה יהיה מעורב במלחמה הזאת, לפי מה שאמרת. כל העולם הזה פשוט יהיה מעורב במלחמה, כולם. כל הגויים, כל הערבים, כולם שיבואו נגד עם ישראל וילחמו במלחמה הזאת. בהתחלה, כל אחד פשוט ירצה את עם ישראל, את ירושלים, את ישראל, כולם ירצו אותה. את ירושלים, כן. וכולם ירצו אותה, כל העולם. לא התייחסו אלינו פשוט ירצו. כולם ירצו אחד נגד השני כי ירצו אותנו.
כמה זמן ייקח?
מה?
כמה זמן ייקח?
הכל זה, כל הדבר הזה של הדברים הרעים ייקח שבועיים.
כל הדברים הרעים ייקח שבועיים. מה יקרה בשבועיים האלה? מה זה דבר רע?
בשבועיים האלה דבר רע זה ימותו יותר מכמה מיליון אנשים. ימותו שם בקטע הרע.
תגיד לי, מה זה? איזה מלחמה זאת? מלחמה רוחנית? מלחמה של חיילים בחיילים? מה זה?
חלק. בהתחלה זה יהיה מלחמה של חיילים. פשוט כל העולם יבוא, פשוט בהתחלה כל הגויים ילחמו אחד עם השני וירצו את ישראל. בסופו של דבר, מה שיקרה זה ככה, כולם יתאחדו ולחמו נגד עם ישראל, ועם ישראל ימותו הרבה מאוד אנשים. כמה מיליון אנשים ימותו. מלא אנשים. ולחמו נגדנו גם. אנחנו, צה"ל כאילו יצליח להדוף את זה ליומיים, לפי מה שאני ראיתי, ואז פשוט כולם יהרגו אותנו, ולא היה לנו במי להיעזר, רק בקדוש ברוך הוא. ואז מה שיקרה...
רגע, שאני אבין. במלחמה הזאת צה"ל מחזיק יומיים.
יומיים.
ואחרי יומיים?
אחרי יומיים לא.
אין צה"ל.
אין צה"ל.
אז הכל פתוח.
הכל פתוח.
עכשיו, אתה יודע איזה...
להצטרף אליו, איראן תצטרף אליו.
איראן?
כל האום. רוסיה, דרום קוריאה, כל האום. ממש כולם. כולם. כל 70 אומות יעברו נגדנו. 70.
איפה דאעש פה?
דאעש, מה שהם יעשו, לפי מה שאני ראיתי, זה יחטפו אנשים. פשוט יחטפו אותם.
יחטפו אנשים שלנו.
כן, כמו שעשו לגלעד שליט, כאילו ככה עשו. כאילו יחטפו אנשים ולא ישמעו אותם. כאילו, ויענו אותם וכאלה דברים. עכשיו מה שראיתי גם זה שהר הזיתים ליד ירושלים, הוא כאילו מי שיזכה להינצל, אז ההר הזה ייבקע לשתיים. וברגע שההר הזה ייבקע לשתיים בשנייה הזאת, המשיח יתגלה לעיני כל חי, כאילו לעיני כולם, לעיני כולם. פשוט כולם יראו שזה המשיח, יבינו, זה המשיח, הנה. הוא יתגלה לעיני כולם, הוא יעמוד בפתח שם של הר הזיתים, והוא יגיד מי זוכה להיכנס ומי לא. מי שלא זוכה להיכנס נשאר בחוץ ומת, מי שזוכה להיכנס נמצא.
זה נפתח?
נפתח לשתיים.
פתאום משהו?
לא, יעלו שתי...
רעידת אדמה?
לא.
אטום?
לא.
מה?
יעלו, בהר הזיתים יש קברות, נכון? אז יעלו שתי מתים. פשוט יקומו לחיים שתי מתים, אחד מפה, וזה ייבקע לשתיים.
הנביא אומר שכן, יצא ביום ההוא לכם מקרא ועמדו רגליו ביום על הר הזיתים אשר על פני ירושלים מקדם, ונבקע הר הזיתים מחציון מזרחה וימה, גג גדולה מאוד, ומש חצי הר צפונה וחצי נגבה. זכריה הנביא, הוא היה מזמן.
וזה בוודאות יקרה אם ימשיכו ככה, אם העולם ימשיך ככה, זה בוודאות מה שיקרה. בוודאות.
עכשיו, שאלה פה מישהי שאלה טובה, ואני רציתי גם לשאול אותך, איך אני יודע שזה מתחיל?
זה יבוא בבום. קודם כל זה כבר יתחיל איזה משהו שטוב יפרוץ. כל החדשות, הכל, כולם יגידו מלחמת העולם השלישית פרצה. פשוט כולם יבינו את זה. זהו, אין זמן, ואז ככה יתחיל, וכולם יבינו שהשם אחראי למעשה הזה.
זאת אומרת, יקרה איזשהו אירוע ביטחוני, שמזה יצא מכלל שליטה, וכולם יתחילו להילחם אחד בשני.
כן, בדיוק.
ובהתחלה הם ילחמו אחד בשני.
כן.
ואנחנו?
אנחנו לא נהיה מחוץ לזה, ואחרי זה כולם יתאחדו, ויבואו נגדנו.
אז רגע, נתן, יש לנו גוג ומגוג שזה כבר התחיל, יש לנו את התבוסה, הם כובשים, מגיעים לירושלים, הר הזיתים נבקע, מי שנכנס להר הזיתים זה בעצם הגנה עליו, ואז השם מופיע, הוא זה שנלחם בגויים. הוא בא, אתה אומר, עם חלוק וכתמי דם, והכתמי דם האלה הם בעצם כתמי דם של כל היהודים שנהרגו רק בגלל שהיותם יהודים במשך כל הדורות. רק נשאר של הגויים, אבל מה שיותר מעניין זה אנחנו. השם נוקם בגויים. אתה יודע באיזה דרך?
מה שיקרה פשוט בכמה דקות זה יקרה פשוט יעבוס הכל. פשוט אתה רואה, ראיתי את זה מלמעלה, ראיתי פשוט כל הבניינים, כל המקום שטיפלו, התמודדו, כל מדרגה, כל חומה, הכל פשוט טיפול. התמוטט, פשוט הכל התמוטט, פתאום. אין מקומות מסוימים, רק אם יש מקומות של למשל צדיקים, אז לא יקרה הדבר הזה, לא יקלו המדרגות והחומות.
זה יהיה רק בישראל או בכל העולם?
זה יהיה בכל העולם.
The next group of clips reveal that President Obama and George Soros conspired with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt when they reveal that President Obama and George Soros started the Civil Society 2.0 program, which trained Egyptian activists how to use social media to gain the power to overthrow President Mubarak. These clips also reveal that the U.S. ambassador to Egypt participated and that it was civil society groups funded by George Soros that rewrote the Egyptian constitution in a failed attempt to transfer the power the Egyptian military had over the Egyptian government to the newly elected Muslim Brotherhood president, Morsi.
So let's begin here. Two items that keep popping up in our research. And they keep popping up with the left and Ukraine, and they're used interchangeably. You'll see them in the government documents that we will release here in the next few minutes. The aid packages, and even by the activists that are rioting in the streets all around the world. And they are these terms: civil society and open society. We noticed one name pop up again and again and again and again, and that's what cracked this for us. His name is Alec Ross. Ross was appointed to the State Department as a senior advisor on innovation to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Hillary's State Department was bastardizing a plan that actually began a few weeks after Obama was elected in November 2008. It was an initiative that actually came from the Bush White House called Public Diplomacy 2.0. Its stated goal was to enable people in other countries to combat violent or extreme ideology, more specifically, Islamic radicalism from Al-Qaeda. So the State Department invited a bunch of tech-savvy people from all over the world to show them how to network and how to launch social media campaigns to counter radical ideology. But just a few months later, elections have consequences. Obama was elected, and the new administration under Hillary Clinton changed Public Diplomacy 2.0 to Civil Society 2.0. Remember, that's the leftist catchphrase I told you about? Civil society is often used interchangeably with open society. That's the George Soros thing. Here's Alec Ross on what Civil Society 2.0 was doing and how they were actively training groups to mobilize through social media. Watch.
A second one is a program that Secretary Clinton launched in Marrakesh, Morocco in November of 2009 called Civil Society 2.0. And what we've done with Secretary Clinton's Civil Society 2.0 program is we've taken one of America's undeniable strengths, the strength of our technology and of our innovators, and we've put them to work in service of our diplomatic goals. So what we've done is we've created these things called tech camps, where over a couple days there's very intensive training of grassroots civil society organizations by American technology experts.
Civil Society 2.0 had been on the ground a full year before the Arab Spring kicked off. And what did they call that again? They said it was a spontaneous revolution. U.S. dollars then began to flow to the protesters on the street. They did this through funding from the Freedom House and National Endowment for Democracy. What a coincidence. Remember, the State Department had that meeting in 2008, a few months after Obama was elected? Yeah, you know who's there? The Egyptian activists that brought down their countries? Yeah, they were at that conference. They were, quote, taught to use social networking and mobile technologies to promote democracy. This is a leaked State Department diplomatic cable where they confirmed the participation of the Egyptian activists in the 2008 meeting in New York. It's now going out online. It also reveals that the U.S. Embassy in Egypt was putting pressure on the Egyptian government in support of the street protesters. And just as in Ukraine, the Egyptian regime buckled under the new weight of these new tech-savvy global community organizers. All three stages that would later be used in Ukraine were pulled off to perfection in toppling the regime in Egypt. But then it fell apart. What about stage 4? Infiltrating the criminal justice system. It was a little harder in Egypt because the military had an iron grasp on the government. So how did they plan on getting around that? Well, exactly what George Soros proposes in his documents. You just rewrite the Constitution. Let me show you this. It's a Reuters article written right after the regime fell. It describes who was involved in rewriting Egypt's constitution. Look who's in charge. Quote, civil society groups had already produced several drafts and a new constitution could be ready in a month. The main group in charge was the Arabic Network for Human Rights. Come on. Come on, guess who funds them? Soros. And while Soros funded all the NGOs that went to work rewriting the Constitution, he then moved to get his guys into top-level positions within the government. Remember, that's part of the last step. Mohammed el-Baradi, he emerged out of nowhere as the de facto leader of the revolution. He was also a trustee of the organization called the International Crisis Group. They're a think tank that claims to be, quote, working to prevent wars and shape policies that would build a more peaceful world, or if I may paraphrase, a civil society. They're also founded and funded George Soros. Everything was in place for a Ukraine-level theft of a country, but the Egyptian military stepped in and stopped it.
In the following clip, the former dean of law at Zagazig University, Nabil Ahmed Helmi, talks about the division among Egyptians that the George Soros-run NGO, Egyptian Initiative for Personal Rights, socially engineered before the orchestrated protests began. This NGO paid propagandists to write articles about economic and other differences that incited young Egyptians to become activists and form the organizations that joined the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood in the Obama, Soros, and Muslim Brotherhood orchestrated overthrow of President Mubarak.
أنا أقرأ هذا المشهد يعني هو واحد منهم اتكلم على أنها كانت انقلاب ثم بقت ثورة والتاني قال في فوضى. دي أمنيات هذه الإدارة. أمنيات هذه الإدارة أن تنجح الحرب الجيل الرابع من الحروب زي ما بيسموها وأن تنقلب مصر إلى فوضى وهي لن تنقلب.
تقصد بالجيل الرابع الاقتتال الأهلي يعني.
الاقتتال الأهلي بين الناس
وبعضها داخل أي بلد.
هي 4 أجيال كانت. الأولانية كانت حروب زي كان رومل في الصحراء بين دبابات بين دول وبعدين بعد كده حرب عصابات وبعدين بعد كده احتلال زي العراق وأمريكا خلقت ما يسمى بالجيل الرابع للحروب وهي أن تقتتل الدولة بين شعوبها وخصوصا فئات غير متعلمة أو غير واعية وتنقاد إلى أن تحارب الدولة ويحدث انقسام وهذا ما أوقف في مصر وعمل خلل غير عادي سياسي في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية بصفة خاصة.
The following clip reveals part of a pattern of behavior that discloses that President Obama conspired with George Soros and the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organization to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt, when it reveals that as soon as President Obama entered the White House in 2009, various agencies within the U.S. government, including Homeland Security, began hiring members of the Muslim Brotherhood, who also advised President Obama.
This provocative statement created a firestorm last month because of its contents and the author's government role. I do consider the United States an Islamic country with an Islamically compliant constitution. The tweet by Mohammed el-Biari raised eyebrows thanks to his senior role on the Department of Homeland Security Advisory Council, where he helps craft America's counterterrorism policies. It's a position one analyst says el-Biari is not fit to hold.
He goes to bat for the Muslim Brotherhood. He is passionate that they are the moderate good guys that the U.S. needs to ally with.
Ryan Morrow is a national security analyst for the Clarion Project. He's interviewed el-Biari at length and says the senior Homeland Security advisor staunchly supports the radical Muslim Brotherhood.
He had the symbol that was most closely associated with the Muslim Brotherhood from when the Egyptian military cracked down on them. All the Muslim Brotherhood supporters had a specific sign that they put up on their Twitter and their Facebook pages, and he was right along with them.
el-Biari has praised Muslim Brotherhood icon and al-Qaeda favorite Sayyid Qutb and spoke at a 2004 event honoring Iran's Ayatollah Khomeini. In addition, CBN News reported in 2011 that El-Biari stood accused of leaking sensitive government documents to the media. In light of those charges, Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert pressed former Homeland Security Chief Janet Napolitano in a heated exchange.
Are you saying before this Congress right now that as Secretary of Homeland Security that it is a lie that Mohammed El-Biari downloaded material from a classified website using the secret security clearance you gave him? Are you saying that's a lie?
I'm saying that is inaccurate. That is correct. He, as far as I know, did not download classified documents. What bothers me, quite frankly, are the allegations that are made against anyone who happens to be Muslim.
Well, the allegations are not because he is Muslim.
It is still unclear whether any formal investigation of El-Biari actually took place at DHS. What is clear is El-Biari's recent promotion at the department.
In September 2013, he was promoted. So he not only is an official advisor, he's one of the select advisors within that group to influence policy.
El-Biari and the Department of Homeland Security did not respond to CBN's request for comment. El-Biari is not the only Obama administration advisor who's been tied to the Muslim Brotherhood.
There's lots of evidence. The President of the United States personally takes counsel from Mohammed Majid, and that means the enemy is inside the wire.
Majid has reportedly met with President Obama to advise him on immigration and counterterrorism policy. He also sits on a Department of Homeland Security working group on, quote, violent extremism. Yet national security expert Frank Gaffney told CBN News that the organization Majid leads has troublesome ties.
He is the president of the largest Muslim Brotherhood front organization in the United States, the Islamic Society of North America.
In 2007, federal prosecutors named ISNA as an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terrorism financing trial in American history. The defendants were convicted of funding the terror group Hamas. Majid's group was also mentioned in secret Muslim Brotherhood documents uncovered by the FBI.
The very first group on this Muslim Brotherhood strategic plan was the Islamic Society of North America.
Despite ISNA's radical track record, President Obama delivered a video address at the group's annual summit this year.
Assalamu alaikum, and congratulations to Imam Majid and everyone at the Islamic Society of North America on your 50th annual convention.
One leading Egyptian newspaper recently claimed that the Brotherhood is stepping up its efforts to infiltrate the United States. It identified what it says are 30 Brotherhood operatives that are currently conducting influence operations on U.S. soil.
The following clip reveals that President Obama used the U.S. State Department's U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, to lure Muslims in Egypt and around the world into unknowingly supporting his conspiracy with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt, when it reveals that USAID quietly used U.S. tax dollars to rebuild mosques in Egypt and in other countries.
There is a lot of outrage this afternoon after a government deficit commission suggested huge cuts, including eliminating the interest deduction for home mortgages. It's in an effort to slash nearly $4 trillion in government spending. Well, we investigated some of that spending and found the State Department sending hundreds of millions of dollars to save mosques overseas. It has many taxpayer groups asking why. This 1,300-year-old Egyptian mosque was almost flooded by contaminated sewer water. It and other ancient Cairo mosques and churches were saved from destruction by U.S. taxpayers, part of a $770 million program to rebuild Cairo's sewer system. The checks are written by the U.S. State Department's USAID program.
We're spending money we don't have. This is all, basically on a gigantic credit card right now.
Millions more have been sent to places like Cyprus. The State Department displays before and after pictures of mosques refurbished with U.S. tax dollars.
I think it's very, very hard to explain to the American taxpayer right now who's having an extraordinary time paying their bills and making ends meet.
The State Department refused our request for an interview. We wanted to ask why it's using tax dollars to refurbish religious buildings overseas. Well, the State Department did send us an email saying it is fighting Islamic extremism by building relationships with Islamic leaders. But then one former Muslim says trying to buy respect in the Middle East just shows U.S. weakness.
And America is not showing its power. It's showing appeasement. They're laughing all the way to the bank.
Nani Darwish was born in Egypt, but she's no longer a practicing Muslim. She moved to America and has written books critical of radical Islam. She says most of the mosques in Egypt are run by extremists who have ordered former Muslims like herself to be killed.
We are building mosques to issue fatwas of death against people like me.
U.S. tax dollars also fund computers and mosques in places like Tajikistan and Mali. Here at this ancient mud brick mosque, the State Department has provided internet service along with the computer equipment needed to local imams. Taxpayer watchdogs wonder how the State Department can explain paying for internet service while Americans struggle through the toughest recession in decades.
To the average person, this could very well be an insult to them.
And with radical websites inciting violence and extremism worldwide, there are concerns that the taxpayer-funded internet service could be misused.
They call us the Great Satan. So we're giving them access to really get together against America.
Critics say it is time to review funding for all federal programs that don't directly benefit taxpayers.
Or spending money we don't have, and certainly we can cut items like this.
I would like to point out that I learned that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton began preparing the way for the Obama, George Soros, and Muslim Brotherhood orchestrated overthrow of President Mubarak in Egypt when I read in a March 2009 news article that during her first visit to Egypt, she downplayed serious Egyptian human rights violations listed in a report disseminated by the U.S. Department of State for Human Rights. This was taken by the Muslims in Egypt as a green light to kill Coptic Christians in Egypt without fear of retaliation by the Obama administration. The fact that the Obama administration omitted Egypt from the International Religious Freedom Report at the time the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood escalated the orchestrated protests in Egypt into violence in 2011 supports that President Obama and George Soros conspired with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt. The next clip supports that President Obama conspired with the Muslim Brotherhood to build up the Muslim enemies of Israel when it reveals that President Obama and President Sarkozy of France were caught on an open mic complaining about Prime Minister Netanyahu at a G20 summit. President Obama's conspiracy with the Muslim Brotherhood includes installing Muslim Brotherhood governments in those countries where the Muslim Brotherhood was either outlawed or could do better. And as we saw in the case of Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood planned to Islamize these countries in preparation for a war with Israel that the Democrats in the U.S., their counterparts in the EU, and the Muslim Brotherhood plan to orchestrate when they think they can win. Their goal is to transfer rule over all the land of Israel to the Muslim Brotherhood.
An open mic during last week's G20 summit caught President Obama and French President Nicolas Sarkozy complaining about Israel's prime minister, according to a report by Reuters. "I cannot bear Netanyahu. He's a liar," said Sarkozy. Obama, according to a French interpreter who was translating his remarks, replied, "You're fed up with him, but I have to deal with him even more often than you." The president didn't exactly come to the defense of Netanyahu, whom he most recently saw at the UN in September. It's not surprising, says Martin Indyk, who served as U.S. ambassador to Israel during the Clinton and Bush administrations.
It reveals the inner feelings of the president towards Prime Minister Netanyahu. I don't think it's any secret that these two leaders have not gotten on, basically, from their first meeting on.
And an Oval Office encounter this past May further revealed the frosty relationship between the leaders.
While Israel is prepared to make generous compromises for peace, it cannot go back to the 1967 lines.
Netanyahu essentially lecturing a stern-faced President Obama. Today, White House Press Secretary Jay Carney, in an off-camera briefing, would not comment on the open mic gaffe.
The headline in this photo reveals that President Obama conspired with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government, when it reveals that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton asked President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority to persuade President Mubarak to step down. President Mubarak resigned February 11, 2011. The following clip reveals that President Obama conspired with the Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt, when it discloses that the Obama administration opened up diplomatic relations with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt in July of 2011, which was shortly after President Mubarak was forced to resign in February of 2011, and long before the Muslim Brotherhood candidate Mohammed Morsi was elected as president on June 30th, 2012.
The Obama State Department is establishing diplomatic relations with the Muslim Brotherhood. What's next? Helping them strap on bombs? I'm Alan Barton. Stand by for the front page. Joining me in PJTV Los Angeles studios, Alex Epstein, fellow at the Ayn Rand Center for Individual Rights, and Terry Jones, associate editor for Investors Business Daily. All right, Terry, your paper says formal ties with the Muslim Brotherhood will confer legitimacy on what was not too long ago a terrorist organization. So what is the administration trying to accomplish here?
Well, apparently it still is a terrorist organization in all but name, but well, I think, you know, they've been slowly going about this, building it brick by brick, putting in ties with the Muslim Brotherhood over the years. You know, this didn't just begin yesterday. You know, 2009, Obama invited the Muslim Brotherhood to attend his now famous speech in Cairo. He has had outreach to both the Islamic Society of North America and to the Homeland Foundation, both of which are basically Muslim Brotherhood fronts here operating here in the U.S. And he's had ties with them and invited them to speeches here. So he has been slowly setting the groundwork for this. And, you know, 2 months ago, he basically pulled the rug out from under Israel by declaring that they were going to have to give up land and not saying anything that the Palestinians were going to have to do. And by the way, the Muslim Brotherhood is behind Hamas. For those who don't know it. So, you know, he has been, like I say, laying the groundwork for closer and closer ties with both the Muslim Brotherhood and their fronts here in the U.S. And it looks to me like a very calculated plan to make us more Muslim-friendly.
Alex, Secretary of State Clinton confirmed this week the government is now going to allow diplomats to deal directly with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. One of the big debates is whether they're going to keep or abide by or throw away this 30-year-long peace agreement with Israel. So how is Israel supposed to be responding to this?
Well, how do you think they're responding to it? I mean, Netanyahu comes here and gets the cold shoulder and gets, in a certain sense, a kind of public condemnation almost from Obama, and now we have open arms for the Muslim Brotherhood. So basically what you're saying is that the only moral and rights-respecting country in the Middle East we don't value, and yet we do value a terrorist organization, and I think even as important, the intellectual inspiration for a lot of these modern movements. And it's this whole multiculturalist perspective where you say no culture is better than one another. And in fact, some cultures are good and some cultures are evil. And if you don't respect that and understand that, then you get attacked.
Terry, what do you think is going on here in terms of Obama's seeming antipathy towards Israel? Maybe not so seeming. I mean, it's pretty clear. Relations are pretty poor. And this ongoing outreach to a highly questionable organization, This is totally unlike anything we've seen in terms of generally the president's relationship with Israel.
It is. For an American president to do what he's done is really extraordinary and dangerous, because it's going to destabilize the Mideast in ways that are now unpredictable. But you know, this is not something new. I mean, people should understand this. This has been the progressive left's goal since the late 60s, to delegitimize Israel, to strip them of their rights to their land, and to once again make them a pariah nation. And to a significant degree, I'm sorry to say, they've succeeded, mainly by using the UN, and the fact that our administration seems to heed what the UN says more than it does its own people. They're succeeding today. And I think Obama is merely fulfilling this progressive vision of a Mideast without a Jewish state of Israel in it.
The following clip reveals that President Obama and George Soros conspired with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt, when it reveals that in October 2011, the UN Cultural Organization recognized the Palestinians as making up a state of their own when it admitted the Palestinians into UNESCO. This admission, which coincided with the orchestrated overthrow of the Egyptian President Mubarak, was part of President Obama's larger plot to coerce Israel into caving into the formation of a Palestinian state that included East Jerusalem as its capital.
The UN's cultural agency has given the Palestinians full membership, boosting their bid for state recognition at the United Nations. Of 173 countries voting, 107 backed the move.
Ladies and gentlemen, the General Conference has thus voted to adopt the draft resolution and decided to admit Palestine as member of UNESCO.
Russia, China and France were among those saying yes to the Palestinians, but Israel rejected the move, saying the result would harm prospects for resuming Middle East peace talks.
Israel, no.
Washington, which provides 22% of UNESCO's funding, also voted against.
The United States of America, no.
Under American law, the admission of Palestine as a full UNESCO member triggers a cutoff in U.S. funding to the Paris-based agency.
The next clip reveals that President Obama conspired with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt, when it discloses that in March of 2012, just 3 months before the Muslim Brotherhood candidate Morsi won the presidential election, Representative Louis Gohmert disclosed in a speech to Congress that in the face of the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt was rethinking Egypt's treaty with Israel in order to make Israel into an enemy of Egypt, and they were killing Christians and destroying their churches, the Obama administration announced that they were planning to give $1.5 billion in military aid to the Muslim Brotherhood. This was despite the fact that U.S. law forbade them from giving aid to groups engaging in these kinds of activities. This announcement prepared the way for President Obama to immediately fund the Muslim Brotherhood President Morsi and thereby ensure his immediate success after he won the election on June 30th. 2012.
It's been reported today in a couple of places. One of my friend Breitbart's online news blurb from A.W.R. Hawkins. Another is from the Washington Post. Two different ends of the spectrum, perhaps. They're both reporting the same thing, that this administration, through Secretary Hillary Clinton, is going to announce that it could care less what Congress has ordered about helping the enemies of Israel, about helping those who are terrorizing and persecuting Christians in Egypt and destroying churches and eliminating freedom of religion, and are saying they want to rethink their peace accord with Israel and setting themselves up to be the enemy of Israel. And now this administration, knowing that Congress passed a law that says you can't give people money in Egypt unless you can certify to certain facts. And they cannot, not honestly. If they do so now with what we know publicly, we know they will not be honest in doing so. And they're going to give $1.5 billion, not in humanitarian aid, according to this story, not food, military aid. So forget all of those speeches that this president gave at AIPAC and, oh gosh, we're Israel's best friend, we're going to help them, because, oh no, we're going to give people who have the power to destroy Israel on the border with Israel military aid as they are planning. Many there make it clear they hate Israel, they hate us. And I've said over and over, we don't have to pay people to hate us. They'll do it for free. We have to quit funding the enemy of us and the enemy of our friends. This is insane. And I hope somewhere in this administration is a cooler head that will say, Mr. President, Madam Secretary, Israel is our friend. Remember the speeches you've both given about what a friend they are? And it's time that we do not provide military aid, abetting, and assistance to people that want to destroy Christians, that want to destroy Israelis, and that want to put the world in turmoil and have everyone living exactly as they dictate. We want to keep some freedoms here and in Israel, and the way to do that is not to fund and provide military assistance to anyone unless we know they are our friend, they're Israel's friend, they're the friends of our friends. To do otherwise will bring calamity on this country like they will not realize until it's too late.
The following clip reveals that President Obama conspired with the Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak, when it reveals that after President Mubarak was overthrown in 2011, President Obama pushed for the UN to upgrade Palestine from an observer status to a non-member status, which he did in order to increase the threat to Israel and manipulate Israel into going along with forming a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital.
The UN General Assembly has decided to upgrade Palestine from an observer to non-member status. There was joy from many inside the Assembly in New York, especially from Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. The 193 member states voted overwhelmingly in favour, with 138 saying yes, 41 abstentions and 9 noes, the most prominent of which came from Israel and the US. Unlike at the Security Council, where the bid for Palestinian full membership was blocked last year, there's no veto in the General Assembly, and the two-thirds majority vote needed was easily accomplished. Even before voting began, there were already celebrations on the streets of Ramallah. Now Palestinians are more happy about a decision they imagine could bring them a step closer to an independent state. Perhaps it's fitting that the ballot that went in their favour was held on Palestinian Solidarity Day.
The next clip uncovers that President Obama and George Soros conspired with the Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow the presidents of Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, Yemen, and Syria when King Abdullah of Jordan pointed out that the Muslim Brotherhood was rising to power in the Middle East, and Jeffrey Goldberg, a writer for the Atlantic magazine, pointed out that the overthrown presidents of Tunisia and Egypt were replaced with Muslim Brotherhood fundamentalist regimes.
I want to bring in Jeffrey Goldberg, who's breaking this story in the Atlantic magazine to talk about why this is so significant. Jeffrey, your article is titled "Monarch in the Middle," about Jordan's King Abdullah. He warned you of a Muslim Brotherhood crescent rising over the Middle East. Explain what he meant by that and the reaction in the region to this new magazine article.
Well, you know, he's a lonely guy these days. He's part of a dwindling group of Arab leaders. He was allies with the president of Tunisia, the president of Egypt, Mubarak. These guys are gone. What's replacing them are more Muslim Brotherhood, more religious fundamentalist regimes. He is a secular-oriented modernizer, and he looks at President Morsi in Egypt, and he sees a threat to his vision of a pro-Western, religiously plural kind of Middle East. He looks at the Prime Minister of Turkey and sees essentially a wolf in sheep's clothing, as he would say, someone who's trying to impose Islamist ideas, but slowly and sort of surreptitiously. So what he's saying is to Americans, you guys should pay attention because these guys are taking over, and they are as much of a threat to modernity and to the West and to progressive Arabs as Iran is.
The next clip supports that President Obama conspired with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt when it reveals that in addition to tanks and planes, President Obama sent tear gas to quell the growing protests against President Morsi, transforming Egypt into an Islamic caliphate. President Morsi planned to Islamize Egypt. In preparation for a war against Israel, the Democrats and the Muslim Brotherhood plan to orchestrate when they think they can win.
Despite widespread criticism, the Obama administration has continued to provide taxpayer-funded military aid to the Islamist government of Egypt. In addition to M1A1 tanks and F-16 fighter jets for the Egyptian military, Washington has approved shipment of more than 140,000 tear gas canisters for the Egyptian Interior Ministry. Security forces in Egypt have been running low on tear gas as they deal with widespread protests against the increasingly authoritarian regime of Mohamed Morsi. According to State Department spokesman Patrick Ventrell, the use of tear gas, quote, can save lives and protect property.
The next clip reveals that President Obama conspired with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt when it discloses that after the Muslim Brotherhood President Morsi was ousted on July 3, 2013, President Obama was listed in a criminal complaint against the Muslim Brotherhood as an accessory in the war crimes the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood committed against its fellow citizens.
Egyptian lawyers have filed a formal complaint at the International Criminal Court accusing U.S. President Obama of crimes against humanity. What's going on?
What's going on is a group of lawyers in Egypt, formal lawyers, including some who are professors of law at colleges, filed a complaint, formal complaint at the International Criminal Court, charging Obama and the Muslim Brotherhood of crimes against humanity. And they do this first by quoting the actual definition by the International Criminal Court of crimes against humanity. And there are things like mass murder, rape, attacks on certain segments of groups, anything, just crimes against humanity, numbers of things. And then they give you a couple of good, solid examples that everyone knows, at least in Egypt, because we have all the footage and the taping, of how the Muslim Brotherhood, because of its inciting, created violence against Egyptians in two separate incidences. One is around the presidential palace in December, and the other is in the so-called sit-in camps, which is where they were actually killing and slaughtering people who didn't want to live according to Sharia law and raping women, etc. And then they conclude by saying, because Obama has unequivocally been supportive of the Muslim Brotherhood, and he's been supportive, they cite in two ways, monetarily, by giving them so much money in aid, which in fact they use, or so the the complaint claims, they used to actually pay people, and I believe this, I've seen a lot of reports, to pay people to actually do the things they did, including attack up to 85 churches in retaliation in order to create chaos in Egypt after the ousting of Morsi. So they're saying because he supported them monetarily, and of course politically, we all know he was very supportive of the Muslim Brotherhood. We've seen John McCain, Lindsey Graham go to Egypt and fight on behalf of the ousted Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood and visit them in their cells, including Brotherhood leaders who weren't even in the government. which just shows you the Brotherhood tie. And of course, Ann Patterson, Hillary Clinton, the list goes on and on. We know that the Obama administration, we personally, has been supportive. And of course, Egypt is aware of this. That's why they had placards in the June 30 revolution saying, Obama, stop supporting terrorism. So therein is the point. The complaint says he is an accessory to the Muslim Brotherhood who has committed crimes against humanity, and therefore he too is guilty of them.
The following clip reveals that President Obama conspired with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood to install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt when it discloses that after the Muslim Brotherhood President Morsi was ousted on July 3, 2013, President Obama announced on August 15th of 2013 that the U.S. was not going to participate in the joint military exercises with Egypt planned for September of 2013.
This morning we notified the Egyptian government that we are canceling our biannual joint military exercise, which was scheduled for next month. Going forward, I've asked my national security team to assess the implications of the actions taken by the interim government and further steps that we may take as necessary with respect to the U.S.-Egyptian relationship. Let me say that the Egyptian people deserve better.
The next two clips support that President Obama and George Soros conspired with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt when they reveal that after Secretary of State John Kerry threatened Israel with the Third Intifada or rioting on November 7, 2013, the Hamas Minister of the Interior in Gaza pushed for a Third Intifada on November 13th of 2013.
The alternative to getting back to the talks is the potential of chaos. I mean, does Israel want a Third Intifada? I know there's cynicism. I know so many people don't believe anything I just said. I know there are people...
From both sides.
Well, from both sides. And I know there are people who've grown used to this. And particularly in Israel. Israel says, oh, we feel safe today. We have the wall. We're not in a day-to-day conflict. We're doing pretty well economically. Well, I've got news for you. Today's status quo will not be tomorrow's or next year's. Because if we don't resolve this issue, the Arab world, the Palestinians, neighbors, others, are going to begin again to push in a different way.
الانتصارات القادمة التي سنحرر فيها بإذن الله أرضنا ومسرانا وأقصانا ومدننا وقرانا بإذن الله سبحانه وتعالى كل ذلك توطئة لإقامة الخلافة الإسلامية القادمة ولذلك أيها الإخوة والأخوات نحن على أبواب دورة حضارية إسلامية عالمية كروية بإذن الله وقودها هو غزة رأس حربتها هي غزة مجاهدوها وقادتها هم غزة بإذن الله سبحانه وتعالى أوجه رسالة إلى إخواننا في فتح ألم تسأموا من المفاوضات ألم تيأسوا من عدو في كل مرحلة يصر على إذلال شعبنا ألم تيأسوا بعد مضي 20 عام من المفاوضات وكلكم بالإجماع وعلى رأسكم المجموعة التي تفاوض بعض الإخوة يتصلوا بالدكتور محمد شتير وكذلك كل الذين يفاوضون ايش اخبار المفاوضات بقول والله تعبانه مسكره اليهود بنقعد نتكلم شمال يمين وخلص طب خلص بكفي تعالوا انضموا الينا الى هذه الجحافل المؤمنه التي ترجمت القرآن نصرا وترجمت سنة العدنان عزا وترجمت الجهاد تحريرا بإذن الله سبحانه وتعالى ولذلك نقول لكم بفتح صدورنا وقلوبنا هلموا إلينا انضموا إلينا لنعيد تدريبكم لنعيد تنسيق عقيدتكم لنعيد بناء فكركم مرة أخرى فنحن تلامذة العدنان ونحن تلامذة الخلفاء ونحن تلامذة القادة الأعزاء على مدار التاريخ بنهضة ثالثة بثورة مسلحة بثورة مجاهدة بإذن الله، وستلتحم غزة والضفة في ملحمة مع إخواننا في أراضي الداخل، في أراضي 48 في معركة حطين الثانية لاجتثاث اليهود من جذورهم.
The next clip reveals that President Obama's conspiracy with the Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt was part of his larger plot to intimidate Israel into caving into establishing a Palestinian state based on pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, when it reveals that right after President Mubarak was ousted in 2011, President Obama quietly went along with President Abbas of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, filing a formal application for statehood in the UN. The Obama administration ultimately decided that it was not time yet and voted no to giving Palestine statehood in a UN Security Council meeting that was purposely not held until 3 years later on December 30th, 2014, in hopes that Israel would cave into their demands by that time.
The United Nations Security Council just defeating a resolution on Palestinian statehood. It was a draft that was sponsored by Jordan and would have set a deadline for a final peace deal with Israel and required Israeli security forces to withdraw from Palestinian territories by the end of 2017. Ian Lee joins us on the line now from Jerusalem. I think they needed 9 votes for it to go before the permanent members of the Security Council. They got 8. What's the likely reaction there? Israel will be very pleased, no doubt.
Well, Israel is definitely pleased with this, Michael. They were against it from the very beginning. This was an ambitious proposal. As you said, it would have seen a peace deal, a Palestinian state by the end of 2017. They were just 1 vote shy of the 9 that they needed. But the United States, who did vote against it, said that it shouldn't be interpreted as a victory for the status quo, but that they are still very interested in constructive talks with a 2-party solution. The Palestinians have been expecting this. They were under no illusion that this would pass. We've talked to some Palestinian officials who said that for them, the next step is going to be trying to join international bodies, ones that they can gain membership in, to put more pressure on Israel.
The next clip reveals that after the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood President Morsi was ousted in 2013, and Russia had stepped in militarily and put an end to President Obama's plot to install a Syrian Muslim Brotherhood interim government in Syria, President Obama interfered in Israel's 2015 presidential election in a failed attempt to oust Prime Minister Netanyahu because he could not intimidate him into accepting his demands and the demands of the Palestinians.
Now, our next guest says, well, the Obama administration interfered in Israel's 2015 election. And by the way, they got away with it. David Rubin is with us, former mayor of Shiloh in Israel, and he's with the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund founder and president. But you know a thing or two about interfering with elections. Your charge is the Obama team did that with the Israeli election. How did they do it, and what did they do?
Well, this was common knowledge in Israel. There were billboards all over the country that said, anyone but Bibi, meaning the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. And it was widespread. And it only came out after the elections that there was an organization, a far-left organization, very pro-Palestinian, hence anti-Israel, called One Voice. And they were working together with another organization called V15, meaning Victory in 2015. And the One Voice organization received $350,000 from the State Department. And the 2 organizations joined together.
America's State Department.
The United States State Department during the Obama administration.
$350,000
yes,
to an organization which opposed Netanyahu.
Absolutely. And within a couple of months of receiving that donation, Israel went to elections, and it was already clear that Israel was going to elections at the time that they gave the donation. And the election was a very intense election, and the United States government, or the Obama administration, was on board with these two organizations that were fighting against Netanyahu. I might add one thing that's very important. There is a very clear link to the Obama administration, because the head of the V15 organization was none other than Jeremy Bird, who was a national field director for the Obama administration, for the Obama campaign.
They got away with it. If what you're saying was interference in a foreign election, then the Obama team got away with it.
It's absolutely true, and this was investigated by a Senate permanent subcommittee, which confirmed that this information is true. They did not confirm any illegality, and then it dropped afterwards.
The next group of clips reveal that President Obama conspired with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt. When they disclosed that just before President Obama left office, he campaigned in favor of passing a UN Security Council resolution that demanded that Israel stop building in the West Bank and painted Israel as occupying the Western Wall, which is one of Israel's most holy sites.
The UN Security Council has demanded Israel stop building settlements in Palestinian territory. The United States refrained from vetoing the resolution condemning its closest Middle East ally. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the UN resolution and slammed President Barack Obama for refusing to veto it. He said Israel will not abide by the resolution's terms.
But it really goes to the heart of our disappointment about this resolution, which not only was crafted in part by the Obama administration, but was pushed heavily as well by it. And it's a resolution which denies the fact that there is Israeli sovereignty over the Western Wall, one of our holiest sites, that Jews have prayed to for literally thousands of years. And this resolution actually calls that occupied Palestinian territory. That's outrageous. That is shameful. That is inaccurate. I think it's a difference in worldview. And I think it's unfortunate that President Obama has chosen, as one of his parting shots, to abstain on this vote, when he himself had said in 2011, as I mentioned, that statements and resolutions at the United Nations is not the place to bring peace to the Middle East.
The following clip reveals that President Obama and then Vice President Biden conspired with the Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organization to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt. When it discloses that immediately after Biden usurped the office of the President of the United States through the rigged 2020 presidential election, he came to the defense of the Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organization in Egypt. When he joined 30 other nations in the UN Human Rights Council in an unwarranted condemnation of Egypt's treatment of Muslim Brotherhood members, whom he deceptively called mere political activists.
The United States joined 30 other Western and mostly European countries that have signed a joint statement calling on Egypt to end the prosecution of activists, journalists, and perceived political opponents and release them unconditionally. Egypt's foreign ministry expressed, quote, great surprise and disapproval in reaction to the statement, which it said contained inaccurate information without proof. The United States, which has observer status at the UN Human Rights Council, called on Cairo to lift curbs on freedoms of expression and assembly. Egypt is a close ally of the United States, but the Biden administration has vowed to speak out about human rights violations. Finland's ambassador Kirsti Kupi read the statement to the Geneva Forum on Friday.
We urge Egypt to end using terrorism charges to hold activists in extended pre-trial detention with additional charges. We express concern at abuses of due process, including limitations on lawyers. We call for accountability and end of impunity.
President Abdul Fattah al-Sisi, who ousted the Muslim Brotherhood from power in 2013, has overseen an extensive crackdown on political dissent that has steadily tightened in recent years. Sisi has said there are no political prisoners in Egypt and that stability and security are paramount.
The next clip reveals that President Obama and then Vice President Biden conspired with the Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organization to overthrow President Mubarak and install a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt, when it discloses that immediately after Biden usurped the office of the presidency in the rigged 2020 presidential election, he reinstated funding the United Nations Relief and Works Organization, or UNRWA, which provides the education system in Gaza that is teaching Palestinians to want to kill Jews and overthrow Israel, while allowing UNRWA schools to be used by the Hamas terrorist organization to store the rockets they have been launching into Israel.
President Trump stopped funding the UN Relief and Works Agency back in 2018 because of their anti-Semitic and anti-Israel propaganda, which is being fed to young Palestinian kids and refugees. But earlier this month, the Biden administration restarted $150 million in funding, with little more than a half-hearted promise to try better next time from the agency to keep extremism materials out of the classroom. I know in 2021, the left was watered down the terms like racism and anti-Semitism so much that we forget just how hateful these beliefs truly are. So just so we're clear, here's what the students are learning, courtesy of StopAntisemitism.org.
بعلمونا ان الصهيونية هم اعدائنا وهم اهم شيء لازم يسوي فيهم عملية.
يعني انهم بيعلمونا بالمدرسة انهم ارهابيين
بيحكوا لنا عن اليهود انهم هدول مش منيح وهدول بقتلوا قاعدين بشبابنا. بيحكوا لنا هدول غدارين وبيحكوا لنا انه هدول بغدرونا هدول مش منيح. اذا بطعن بدعس عليهم عمل عملية.
Joining us now to discuss is Adam Carrito. He's a senior writer on foreign policy and national security for the Washington Free Beacon. Welcome back, Adam.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Chris, you have a new piece out about this. So tell us about some of the new video evidence and copies of lesson plans that suggest nothing has changed with this UN agency and how they're teaching Palestinian children.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that this is startlingly new, but it's really not. It's been going on for decades and decades, and the lesson plans, which have switched from in-person to online in times of the coronavirus pandemic, are essentially the same as what has been going on before the pandemic took place. Look, this is removing the idea that Jews have a place in the Middle East, that Jews have a homeland in Israel, saying that Palestine will exist from sea to sea. That essentially erases the idea of a Jewish state. We also have militant displays taking place at these UNRWA facilities. Again, these are facilities that are being paid by the United Nations and donor nations like the United States and the Europeans. I've seen videos for years and years, and it seems that they're continuing to this day of children 4, 5, 6, 7 raising Palestinian militant flags, preaching in Arabic that Israel will be destroyed, and telling people very clearly that what they're being taught in school, these lesson plans, are about eradication of Israel, not about fostering peace, not about having a state that lives in peace alongside its neighbor Israel, but Israel not having a place to belong in the region, and going even so far as to promote violence to achieve that.
And this curriculum, it's being sent by the Palestinian Authority, correct? And I've also heard reports that perhaps with this UN agency, they've even hired and worked with Hamas even. Is that correct?
Yeah, they have. There's been instances of teachers affiliated with Hamas. The oversight, as you can imagine, is not particularly strict over there. Look, if they're failing to police things as simple as their textbooks, that is the written word, you can assume that they're not policing the people that they hire. We've also seen in the past instances of Hamas using UNRWA facilities, UNRWA schools as clandestine weapons facilities. They store rockets and missiles there in the hopes that the Israeli military won't bomb them because they're schools. So you can see that UNRWA really, to put it very kindly, has not put up much of a fight against Hamas and the radical agenda that the Palestinian Authority and Hamas teaches there.
The following clip reveals that President Obama and the Muslim Brotherhood orchestrated the overthrow of President Mubarak and the installation of a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt, when it reveals that President Obama's former Secretary of State, John Kerry, illegally gave Israeli military secrets to Iran during the Trump administration.
A new bombshell report finds former Secretary of State and Joe Biden's climate envoy John Kerry gave out military secrets to Iran. A tape leaked on Monday by the New York Times shows Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif saying Kerry told him about covert Israeli operations in Syria during the Trump administration. He admitted on the record that Kerry told him of some 200 Israeli strikes hitting Iranian targets in Syria dating back as early as 2017. While military analysts say Kerry's actions violated the Logan Act, eroded international relationships, and undermined U.S. national security.
Well, these news clips revealed that President Obama, George Soros, and the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood orchestrated the overthrow of Egyptian President Mubarak. They disclosed that the USA is fulfilling Revelation 18:24, which describes Babylon the Great as that nation that becomes responsible for all who are slain on the earth. In addition to the deaths associated with the overthrow of President Mubarak, every death that is connected to the Democratic Party's plot to build up the Islamic and communist enemies of Israel, as well as those deaths that result from the divisions that the Democratic Party's education and media propaganda outlets are causing as they drum up worldwide support for their plot to overthrow Israel, are all part of the fulfillment of Revelation 18:24. All of the above support that the USA is the fulfillment of Babylon the Great, described in Revelation chapter 16 through 18.